Good morning. This is part 8 of my court case against Jehovah's Witnesses. The judge in the Court of Appeal had struck my case out. He said I was statute barred. So I asked the Supreme Court, could I appeal to them because I had lives to save? And they said no, I couldn't. And here it is. But they did repeat what the previous court had stated. And here it is. They stated the Court of Appeal identified the litigation as personal injury, and which injuries were claimed to have been sustained as a result of unlawful activities of the respondents in 2004 and later on, of course. So they repeated the unlawful activity. Jehovah's Witnesses took no notice of this whatsoever. Now, in January of 2016, I became seriously ill. So I'm thinking, what can I do? So I contacted a couple of activists, and they sent me some of the secret letters which Watchtower sends to each congregation body of elders. And here's one of them. That's November the 6th, 2014. And this proved to be pivotal because in this it states that confidential information shouldn't be revealed to anybody unless the branch office states it can be. And these are detectives, policemen, parties to a lawsuit, and so on. And it applies to written materials and unwritten knowledge possessed by elders. It pertains to the shepherding textbook, the organized book, and so on. So the barrister for Jehovah's Witnesses in my legal cases had kept to this rule that he wasn't to tell the judge about their confidential or secret rules which had affected me. And it gets worse in the next page. And this is where elders learn of criminal activity, and it says that strict confidentiality must be maintained to avoid unnecessary entanglement with the secular authorities. For example, even the fact that a judicial committee has been formed should not be disclosed to persons not entitled to know. Now that was shocking, because in their judicial system, with their unfair rules which breach human rights, they can cause harm by making false accusations. Now, if they cause harm to the extent that the authorities get involved, they won't tell the authorities that a judicial committee had been formed. So they keep that quiet and hide it. Now, I explained to the courts later on that this was a hit-and-run tactic, that they were harming people but covering up their involvement in the harm. Now, why do they do this? Well, we have another letter, another body of elders letter, and this was September the 1st, 2000, and it's talking about filling out the S77 form. And it says, remember, this form is disclosable. In other words, as it says later on down the paragraph, do not write any additional comments on the S77 notification checkbook style form. The very design of this form is to help avoid such extra remarks. In other words, they don't want a lawyer or the courts knowing what they're doing behind the scenes. I was shocked, absolutely shocked. So I took another legal case, and yes, I was being a nuisance in the courts, but I had lives to save, so I thought. So I took a case, and I now had documentary evidence that they were hiding things from the courts. But it came before a judge in March of 2017. And she was very nice, but she said, look, she says she was obliged to stick to what the courts had said before, and she couldn't go against them. But she suggested I get involved in activism. Well, I knew that activism wasn't going to deal with these unlawful activities. So I decided that I needed to get a court order to state that these previous judgments had been obtained by fraud. So I went to the Court of Appeal, and I'm going to quickly tell you what they said. After telling them of the incident in 2009, they stated this. This is the Court of Appeal. If it be the case that all these matters were suppressed and concealed to a degree, as you say, that amounts to fraud, well then, for the reasons outlined by the other judges, there may potentially be another route. I had taken the wrong procedural way, and I needed to deal with it differently. So I'll tell you about that in the next video. Thank you so much for listening to this very complicated case.